Hi guys, Aaron here. Since the first two time trials of the season are upon us, I want to dedicate a couple of videos to the theme of time trialing. Some of you have asked that how do I successfully compete in these flat time trials despite my body type, which is basically a climber. I'm very light, not too much power, but despite that I managed to do quite well and rank quite high even in flat time trials. So how do you do that? Well, in order to do that, you have to avoid these mistakes and misconceptions that I'm going to describe in this video. So the first one is, well, many people, when they want to time trial, improve their times, they buy a time trial bike, which is all well and good. Thanks to the position, you will get a lot faster, potentially. But the problem is that usually they can't put out the same amount of power, and for some people it's a big problem because they can put out nowhere near as much power as they would otherwise on a standard road bike. So what is the solution to that? Well, there are no shortcuts, I can tell you that. What I've done to negate this is I always, every winter I put my time trial bike on the turbo trainer and I use that exclusively indoors. This winter I've racked up around 150 hours in the time trial position. I kept tweaking it a little bit, I went down a frame size, but the main point is you need to spend time on the time trial bike, on the air bars, in the time trial position, practicing. Look at yourself in the mirror, try to stay composed, watch yourself while you're pedaling. Your whole core must be very stable even when putting out high powers, and that's how you essentially adapt your body to riding a time trial bike. Because some people say that you need to be comfortable on a time trial bike, or they say that there's a compromise, between comfort and aerodynamics. If you do this, there's no compromise because you can set up a very aggressive position like I have here. As you can see, for my saddle height, this is quite a lot of drop. The goal is to achieve a flat back. You can't go much more than that. Going any lower doesn't make sense. So yeah, this is the first thing you need to do. On a side note, what you will never be able to achieve is to exert the same amount of force on the pedals while in a time trial position, and that's just because of the much more closed up hip angle. But if you've seen my previous video, then you already know power is torque or force on the pedals and the cranks times cadence. So there's a very effective solution, and it's what I do. On the time trial bike, I pedal at a faster cadence to achieve the same amount of power as I would on a road bike, but with much less muscle strain, much more effectively. So yeah, in the races I don't really do this intentionally, but I go up to 105 cadence, 105. That's not too uncommon. And the good time trialists, I think, if you watch them, Bradley Wiggins for example, he does it. So yeah, you take the stress away from your muscles, which are already quite stressed by the position. Okay, that's the power portion of the problem, but it really isn't worth anything if you don't actually ride your time trial bike outside. Many people reserve this bike for shoulder rides if they have one. Many cyclists, triathletes ride these bikes all the time, so they don't usually have this problem, but cyclists, they mainly ride their road bike because they think it's more comfortable, it's better handling, and it's lighter, etc. But if you want to actually go fast, be confident when you're putting out that power, you really need to ride in the time trial bike, because it's a whole different beast. It's still a bike, but riding on the air bars even more so if you have an aggressive position, is something else altogether. You need to learn how to corner, how to brake, how to descend. It's going to be scary at first because the bike gains speed a lot quicker in the descents, which is quite unnerving at the first time. Then you need to be able to handle the bike in the wind, crosswinds, tailwinds, headwinds. You need to experience all these aspects that you can meet on race day in order to be actually able to use that power with confidence, because ultimately what you want is to go fast, and if you don't put the power down because you're scared in the crosswind, then it isn't really worth anything. Another side note to the previous power part of the equation. Some people say that stretching, core work, etc., gym work, yoga help with this. Well, they do, but nothing will replace riding your time trial bike in your time trial position at your preferred time trial power. So you can't really go anywhere without that, or anywhere fast. And then one final mistake is the wrong usage of the power meter when actually doing a time trial at the event. So I would like to sum it up this way. When you're training, average speed means nothing. You have to do your intervals, your training plan, etc., and stick to that. But in the actual event, it's not the person who averages the highest power or power to weight that's going to win. No, it's the person who averages the highest speed and thus creates the lowest possible course time. And many people will fail to acknowledge that. So they really need to look at the pacing. This is quite a complicated subject, but mainly on technical courses where you have corners, descents, uphills, headwind, tailwind, crosswind. But the rule of thumb is the slower you go, the more resistance you're experiencing, the more power you need to put on. So you have to manage it this way. For example, when it's an out and back course, you have to push hard into the headwind and ease off a little bit in the tailwind. Why is that? Well, I'm going to explain it in a different video. It's a bit of a physical thing, or has to do with physics, sorry. But the main thing is that at lower speed, the same amount of added power is going to yield a higher difference in terms of speed, and that's what's cutting your time. So this is the first thing. So now on a technical course, a flat power profile won't work. In a velodrome, yes. In a flat course with no wind, yes. But anything other than that, you don't want to ride a completely flat power curve. And then speaking about power, so actually pacing a time trial well without a power meter is extremely hard, and training for it is even harder, so I'm not even going to consider that here. But some people make the mistake of going out too hard. Why is that? When you're fresh, prepared for an event, had some caffeine, had a good rest, had a good warm-up, in the first couple of minutes you feel extremely strong and you ride, you can't really stick to your FTP or near threshold power because it seems all too easy. For example, me in the first couple of minutes I feel I could go 400 watts easily, but after that the reality hits you, so you need to be very careful with that. On the other hand, as I said, you can't watch your power too much sometimes, and this is true mainly for the second half of the course. You really need that judgment, how much you have left, how early can you push or start pushing more power, perhaps go over the threshold, when to do it. And in those technical courses I've told about earlier, when can you burn those matches, as people like to say. And a very good way to practice this is, well, it's what I do, is I pick out some Strava segments, different lengths, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, and try to go or set the best time possible. This way you will learn how to pace yourself for different durations or different kinds of effort, and it also helps if you gather as much information about your course beforehand, before the event, as possible, so you will actually know when to apply the increased power. Okay, so well, I'm no real expert in time trialing, but from the cycling and cycling events, this is what I tend to do best. So I hope that you find these pieces of advice useful and will help you to set your personal bests or crack your previous times. If you want to know more about this bike setup or perhaps some other time trialing tips, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.